In today's video, I'm asking the question, would Star Wars Destiny have been as successful if it wasn't Star Wars Destiny? In other words, how critical was the Star Wars IP itself to Destiny's success, and how did it, perhaps, factor into some of its struggles?
A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando.
Hey there, my Star Wars Destiny friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and the Commando cast. Thanks for checking in for Destiny Friday, and happy Destiny Friday, but also happy holiday weekend. Many of us across the globe are celebrating the holidays this weekend and next weekend or around now. So again, I want to wish you and yours happy holidays and however you choose to celebrate or not to. Now today, as I mentioned, I'm kind of asking an interesting question I was thinking about on my recent road trip, which is, would Star Wars Destiny have been as successful if it wasn't Star Wars Destiny? All right, so let's talk about what I mean by that. And first, it's very easy to just say no, right? And there's many arguments for no, it would not have been as successful. There are many players who came to Star Wars Destiny who had never played a TCG before. Probably more than any other game I've ever played in terms, I don't know what the percentage was, but in terms of the number of people you talk to over the course of your career within the community, there were a good number of people who had never played a TCG before, and they came to Destiny because it looked cool, there were big chunky dice, but it was Star Wars. And again, I think it's very reasonable to say, no, the game probably wouldn't have attracted as many people without being Star Wars. And I think that's a fair point. And then it does make you then ask yourself, right, how much did the Star Wars IP actually float the game itself in terms of sales for as long as it did, right? It hadn't not been Star Wars, would it have made it 9 sets, 9.5 sets, whatever we want to call it? Maybe, maybe not. And certainly, if you look at what's happening now with Unlimited, where there are tons of people on board with Unlimited, like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? But they don't even freaking know how good the game is yet, right, overall. Again, you can very easily make that case. Now, in my heart, I don't believe that what made Destiny a good game was the Star Wars IP. I think Destiny was, in of itself, a good game. Now, to draw the distinction as we go through the rest of the video, I want to call out what's called the dice duel system, which is, as 99% of us are aware, the dice duel system is actually what Star Wars Destiny is based on, right? So the dice duel system is FFG's, or whomever owns the trademark now, right? But it's FFG's game system that they essentially patented. Well, I believe they trademarked it. I don't think they patented it. I haven't really checked. But I'd kind of joked not really joked, I was kind of serious for many years about if the dice duel system itself ever went up for sale. This was after the death of Destiny from a official FFG product standpoint. I'd kind of joked that, I might actually buy it and try and make a game out of it. Because I honestly do believe that the dice duel system is a good system, right? I honestly do. So this is where I'm going to actually shift the argument. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not sitting here today and saying that Star Wars Destiny would have been better not being Star Wars. That is not what I'm saying. But what I do want to do from a consideration standpoint is really look at Destiny the game. Right? Notice I'm not saying Star Wars Destiny, right? Destiny the game as the dice duel system. Was it potentially held back by having to be Star Wars? So what do I mean by that exactly? Well, you had to design this game around... It's the same challenge that many other games have always had, in that you're trying to design a game into the IP. You have to have the Force. You have to represent the Force somehow and figure out how you do that. Now, they did it in a way with the colors and the abilities and stuff like that, which is easily transposable to other systems. Right, you could have magic. Right, you could go a medieval theme or a fantasy theme with magic and stuff like that. Very easily portable over, right? So again, I think that's fine. But the other thing you have, that probably the largest thing you have in these IP-based games, and this isn't just a Star Wars problem, but your characters have to feel like those characters. Darth Vader needs to feel like Darth Vader. Luke Skywalker needs to feel like Luke Skywalker. And that's why, again, a lot of these times in these games, what ends up being the more powerful in these IP-based games, I mean, what a lot of the times ends up being kind of the more powerful or more used cards are these random named heroes or characters or whatever. It's actually happening in Lorcana right now. I saw an article the other day where one of the 10-cent uncommon guys who is in 1 second of a movie is actually driving a lot of the meta in Lorcana because they didn't really have to design specifically for that character. And it's the same thing. You can think about any number of things in Star Wars Destiny, the history of Star Wars Destiny, where, these 7-8 point characters were driving the meta, or some no-name character that they had given like a Wat Tambor or something like that, right? They didn't really probably design Wat Tambor first. They didn't say, we need to design Wat Tambor. They probably designed a card and said who would fit on it, versus them saying, we need Darth Vader, let's design a card that's Darth Vader. All right, so that's what I'm driving at in that line of thought. Okay, so then take it one step further on top of that. How much did those design feel restrictions end up impacting Star Wars Dice Duel? Or it impacting, I screwed up my nomenclature. How much did that end up impacting Dice Duel Destiny? Let's call it that. Versus being Star Wars Destiny, right? To have to go to that feel. And I do personally think it carried an impact. I believe that, again, if you go back and you look at the history of Destiny and how they had to develop it, early on, there was a lot of complaints about, supports weren't seeing a lot of play early on, right? I'm talking Awakening, Spirit of Rebellion. Supports were oddly, they were a little high costed because they were still figuring out values and all that in terms of having dice on the table. They, in my opinion, early on, they had greatly I don't really think it's my opinion. I think it's a fact. And because I think other people agree with me, but early on, they had a little bit overvalued the value of a die being on the table. So, you saw a lot of your supports were high. Anyway, so what that led to in the first couple sets was, some complaints about, well, this, how come I can't get an X-Wing on the table? How come I can't get a TIE Fighter on the table? Stuff like that. So they design shifted there. Now, again, for good reason, they needed to balance those costs down to where they would see play. But again, the question being, if they weren't held ransom by wanting to have TIE Fighters and X-Wings on the table, would they have gone so aggressively? Would they have done it at all? I don't know, right? I honestly don't know. But again, you have to understand that, or you have to at least acquiesce that having that design pressure of trying to represent the universe, trying to represent the IP, is putting pressure on game design choices, card design choices that wouldn't necessarily be there in a non-IP based, and sure, your game's based around something, right? But in an IP that people aren't necessarily as passionate about, right? And then you add on the fact that it is Star Wars, and you have a lot of people coming, and it was their first TCG. If I look at a game like Flesh and Blood, people become very passionate about their heroes and stuff, but that becomes more of like the play style, and a lot of times those folks are a little more understanding of, and I'm not comparing it to the Destiny community now, I'm comparing it to the Destiny community of, the many, many moons ago. A lot of times those established players who'd been through other games before are a little more understanding of that, whereas Destiny, like if their character didn't feel like their character, there was belly aching about it, right? So you certainly have that, not design pressure, you do have that pressure, I believe, on design. And I don't know whether it's quote unquote reasonable or not, but I think it's a true statement. So then, kind of branching out on that, or expanding out on that more, do I think that, I do. I do think that Destiny, the game, I think that Dice Duel Destiny could have developed itself more in terms of more depth, more angles. And again, I don't know what they would have done different, where they could have gone different. But I believe that when the designers were looking at expanding Destiny, by and large, they would look at parts of the universe they hadn't explored yet, and then design to that, versus exploring a new mechanic, and then not being held to that mechanic, right? If it was bad, they just scrub it and back out. So I would love to hear your thoughts below. Hopefully you've been typing as we've been going through this. Do you think that and it's an interesting question, right? So let me phrase it in a special way, right? Because I think the obvious answer is, did being Star Wars help Destiny? I think net, yes. In terms of sales, in terms of making the game grow, I think it's an obvious statement. Yes, right? The game would not have done as well early on or whatever, but would the game have lasted longer? And would the game have developed more in terms of mechanics, in terms of complexity, if it hadn't been limited by Star Wars, meaning the IP? I think there's very valid arguments for both. And again, I don't know if I would have played the game if it wasn't Star Wars. I would now, knowing what I know. Like, I would go play a dice duel system today if it wasn't Star Wars IP. I'd pick it up and I'd run like crazy with that. But would I have done that, what was it, 6-7 years ago at this point? That can't be right. Yeah, it's probably about right. I don't think I would have. So that means it was essential to get off the ground. But I do think it probably overall hurt the development of the dice duel system game, whatever you want to say. So anyway, let me know your thoughts below. Hopefully this was a thought-provoking one for your Destiny Friday. Thanks, folks. Nothing else. Happy holidays, and go Commando.